As a classroom teacher and a resource specialist and administrator, I've always found it very helpful to be a mentor to classroom teachers, etc. So as I moved along in my career and entered my retirement, I decided that I wanted to talk about the importance of being a mentor. And so I did some writing, and after a while I realized that I wasn't writing an essay, I needed to write a book. And as it turned out at that time, I was on a committee for Canscape Horizon. It's a special writing organization for authors and performers and illustrators in Canada. And I was on the planning committee, and one of our presenters suggested that I contact Pembroke Publishers, and I did, and the rest is history with regards to my book. So got a lot of support putting my ideas to develop the book on relationships make the difference. I've learned so much from other mentors throughout the years, from principals, other teachers, and taking courses at the university, and I wanted to share as well. And it makes a difference in an educator's life when you share. I answer the question all through the book why it's important to develop relationships. In building relationships with our students, I found that it opens a lot of doors of opportunities for the students. You set boundaries in your classroom, and it's important for children to know exactly what's acceptable behavior in the classroom with your peers, with the classroom teacher, and with other adults in the school. Children feel comfortable having these boundaries. We set classroom rules together, and we do that at the beginning of the school year, and it changes as you go out through the school year, depending on what students are able to handle in the classroom. Sometimes you have a classroom group that you have to really be very close to them and guide them very slowly. Other classes, you meet them the first day and they're ready to take off, and they can do all kinds of challenging work. So it depends on the classroom dynamics. It's important for children to have responsibilities within the classroom that they are partaking every day. What it does is it improves their self-confidence and their self-regulation skills, and it empowers the students so they are active participants in their learning every day. You develop relationships in working with your students and listening to them and observing the students and spending time with them. It lets the students know that you care about them and you want them to do well, and you're listening to what they're saying, like if they're able to do something, if they need special adaptations to their learning, etc. So it's a day-by-day process, and you need to spend time in the morning welcoming your students when they come in every day and letting them know that you care about them, you're observing them, you're checking to see what the pulse is today in your classroom, how the students are feeling today, and if you need to adapt any of your plans, etc. I remember so many conversations with parents about how their children will come home, and parents might have a way of completing something at home, but especially when the students are younger, they'll come home and they'll say, well, my teacher says I need to do it this way, etc. So I find the same thing when I'm listening to my grandchildren, that when I hear them talking about the way they do things at school and what's important to their teacher, it means that their teacher is listening to them, and they're important in the classroom, and their children are having a good time because they feel included and loved, and that's really important. It allows you to work together as a whole team. It's just a different feeling. So it's important to get to develop those relationships with your students, because learning within the classroom just takes off. As a resource teacher, I'd be part of learning opportunities with classroom teachers, and it was just amazing what students were able to do. I know this one time with a grade 5, 6 classroom, students were working on developing a jungle, and they developed a play, they developed props, poems, stories, etc. It was just amazing. It's like we had a musical at the end. My advice would be, when you first start teaching, I know as a classroom teacher, when I first started, it was difficult to relate and to connect with my parents. So it's important to take time to think about what kind of strategies are you going to use to connect with your parents, and how are you going to bring them on board in being part of the child's team so that you can be setting goals together. So it's important to take this one day at a time. It's important to connect with your parents on a regular basis, have daily conversations with parents when they come in and pick up their children. It's important to make phone calls, make all sorts of connections. So that's really critical. And for a new teacher coming in, you need to plan that and have ideas set up ahead of time, and share it with your parents at the beginning of the year when you have classroom orientation. Let them know ahead of time what your expectations are, and it makes a big difference. in developing relationships. And for parents too, you know, you find out what their strengths are, their skills, what they feel comfortable doing. So, you know, you can do all kinds of things in the classroom with your parent volunteers. For parent volunteers, I don't have the time to come into the classroom. They're readily available at home to maybe prepare some materials that you might not have as much time to do. So, you know, parents enjoy doing that because they feel like they're part of the classroom too. Trust is so important, and that's how you build trust, when you take the time to listen to parents. Sometimes parents have backgrounds where they've had challenges in education themselves, and they feel very nervous about coming into the classroom. They might feel that they don't have the skills that they need. So you give them confidence, and you build this trust, and they know that you know they want the best for their children. When they know that you love their children, you have a great team going for the students. But within the book, there's Black Line Masters that are really useful tools for a classroom teacher starting out. There's an invitation for your parents. There's, you know, other Black Line Masters that you can use when you're getting to know your students, and they can share with you information that you might not readily know. So it's an excellent tool there. I use a lot of stories to further describe when I'm talking about presenting a specific skill with your students in the classroom. So I'll talk about how it worked for me when I was working with my students, some conversations I had with parents, some conversations that parents had with me, so that I learned as a teacher. And so it's just chock full of useful tools for teachers. And, you know, it's a good book for parents to read as well. You know, I think anyone who's interested in education would find the book useful and interesting and exciting.